Hey, there's no shame in trying things that people ain't never tried before.
Yippee-yay, there'll be no wedding bells for today. I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle, jingle, jangle, as I go.
That shit gets me hyped the fuck up for some cowboy adventures in the West. I don't know about you guys, but when I hear that, man, my spurs do start jingle, jangle, jingling. All the tracks do in different ways. I mean, Blue Friend is still mad about the boy all these years later. These songs molded New Vegas's aesthetic. They set an upbeat but bluesy tone, matched by the setting and gameplay. I can't hear these songs and not see the world in an orange tint. I can't see an orange tint and not think of these songs. They coalesce so beautifully and perfectly, and made that memorable setting for that transcendent, really transcendent game. Fallout New Vegas was so far above, is so far above all of its competition. It's the best Fallout game, even better than the first and second in my opinion. But let's look at an equally memorable soundtrack which forged a very specific tone for an excellent setting, for a game which set the trend for years to come.
I don't want to set the world on fire.
Oh, sorry, you thought this was a Fallout 3 track? Sorry, dude,
you gosh
wrong.
darn
You're wrong,
moogly
that's
doogly.
incorrect.
I can't believe
can't
you.
believe
I
you.
can't believe in God either.
No, it's a
because I'm
Fallout
enlightened by my
4
own
track,
intelligence.
you dumb goose, you
frickin'
dumb
boy.
dope.
What
Bet you
a
feel
gayfer.
bamboozled right now, don't you? No, while this track was in Fallout 3, and it did define the setting, and it did set the tone for the entire game and its events, and while it did turn an entire younger generation onto another older generation's music, this track was also in Fallout 4, as were many other Fallout 3 tracks. And while those tracks are phenomenal and memorable and game-defining, they defined Fallout 3, not Fallout 4. Those songs did not match Fallout 4's tone, which was completely separate from Fallout 3's and Fallout New Vegas's. Fallout 3 was sad, bleak, and lonely. The world was old, and the tracks matched that. Many were sad, bleak, lonely, and, most importantly, old, to match the old, dead world you're inhabiting. Fallout New Vegas was also bleak and lonely, but the source of that bleakness and that loneliness was not in the setting, but rather in the people and their squabbles. And again, the soundtrack reflected that. The songs weren't all about setting the world on fire and civilization, but rather a dichotomy between upbeat, kinda happy, western, funky, jazzy music, and slower, sadder pieces about people. Again, excellent consistency and tone, and soundtracks to match the themes in the game. Even more so than Fallout 3. But would you expect anything less from Obsidian? And then we come to Fallout 4, which, based on the marketing pre-release, had us all expecting a complete attitude shift, complete tone shift. Brighter colors, airships in the sky, and a plot and soundtrack more Blade Runner and flippity-flappin' chicken run, then Fallout, and I was so excited. As much as I love sad boy apocalypses, I was getting a little burnt out, and I was very much looking forward to a jazzy, cyberpunk, greasy romp through Boston. I was so ready. But, and, I don't know if I should use but or and here. Both would work, but both also mean different things in this context. Man, that's a hard one. But the soundtrack, like the game, kinda delivered. And the soundtrack, like the game, kinda delivered. One implies a good kinda, the other implies a bad kinda. And I don't think it's either. Fallout 4 is, from head to toe, bipolar. On one hand, it treads familiar ground, preying on nostalgia, milking nostalgia, trying to recapture that Fallout 3 atmosphere and tone for older fans, for the nostalgia faggots, while also trying to blaze new trails with the jazz and the rock and the good combat, the fun, the very fun combat, the upbeat gameplay, and overall style. But neither really work and neither really fail either. While we could go on for hours about Fallout 4's directive disorder and why the game felt just lukewarm overall because of it, we're focusing on the soundtrack here, which was equally lukewarm, but rather than simply lukewarm, it was more fire. Awesome, memorable tracks, which I'll carry with me for a long time, and retreaded, rehashed garbage from Fallout 3. I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire does not match the jumping down from the top of a building, smashing a guy with your power armor, hitting somebody with a sledgehammer, then whipping out a minigun and mowing down everybody in a red mist in that weird, disgusting Guy Fieri looking ass power armor. But Uranium Fever sure does. When you're in a vertibird, cruising through the sky, sitting on a mounted gun, lazily shooting down on people who can't do anything to stop you, the Wanderer fits perfectly. It's such an aloof, cool, cruisin' song. Civilization, the Bingo Bango Bongo song from Fallout 3 about civilization, doesn't really work. It doesn't really fit. It doesn't meld. It doesn't pull the whole scene together. When you're taking loads of jet and time is slowed down for 60 seconds, maybe you took Psycho Jet and it's a minute and 30 seconds and you've got 50% boosted damage and time is slowed down, and you're just ripping through people because they can't stop you. Train by Linda Carter works phenomenally, and that's an original Fallout 4 song. They didn't pull that from anybody else. That is their own. From Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman made that. But then they have to retread old ground for nostalgia's sake, for the guy who beats himself off to Fallout 3 because Fallout 3 was the best game ever, man. So they throw Butcher Pete at you again. Part 1 again. You've been listening to Part 1 since Fallout 3 released. They don't even give you Part 2. New Vegas did Part 2 as a nice, subtle little nod, a little meme from Obsidian. But no, Bethesda just throws Butcher Pete Part 1 back in on you for no reason other than to rake in nostalgia, and that's so retarded. Not only because that's a stupid reason to be boring, but also because that takes attention and value away from what could have been. More rock, upbeat, tone, matching tracks. And gameplay also, but again, we're focusing on the soundtrack here. That's why Fallout 4's soundtrack doesn't have any punch. It's inconsistent. It can't decide what it wants to be. And that's all of Fallout 4, really. But they could have at least gotten the soundtrack right. They could have at least framed gameplay and our experience with a thoughtful, well-directed soundtrack. Not half a thoughtful, well-directed soundtrack and half a cheap, nostalgic cash-in. But that's Fallout 4's soundtrack. That's Fallout 4. Man, what a disappointment. But that about rippity raps, slippity slaps, flippity flaps this one up, everybody. I hope you enjoyed watching it, because I certainly enjoyed making it. And I actually did enjoy making it this time, because I didn't have to scrap everything, and it wasn't particularly hard to edit. I didn't have to do a whole bunch. You know, everything just worked. Subscribe to my channel and like this video.
What did they do just when everything looks so dark? Man has read with better accents, waiting positive healing, money to negative, like charm to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. No, don't mess with Mr. In Between.